So when I was a kid, I loved to go fishing with my dad. And we always had a lot of fun. But the only thing that wasn't very fun about it, I guess, was that he could catch fish all day long and I couldn't catch a thing. So maybe I was a little too competitive or something, but it would be not very long before I would start going, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? And my dad always had the exact same advice. He said, son, if you want to catch a fish, you have to learn to think like a fish. Now, out of curiosity, have any of you ever heard that before, that line? Think like a fish? Yeah. It might interest you to know that my dad was the first guy to ever say that. Yeah. Or at least it's the first place I ever heard it, so I'm pretty sure he was the first one to say it. He must have told me that 100 times. But I got to tell you, the advice didn't help me at all. Because the first thing I thought, well, I'm not a fish. I don't know how to think like a fish. But secondly, I just kind of reasoned that, what does it matter how I think? I want to know what to do. What do I got to do to get the fish to bite the hook? That's all I want to know. What do I got to do? And he just kept telling me that you got to think like a fish, think like a fish. And it took me a few years to really grasp, I think, what he meant with this, which is if you want to catch a fish, you have to learn to think about the things that fish think about. Now, that was a different understanding for me, and so I decided I'm going to do some reading and research. I went down to the local library. I checked out every book on fish that they had, signed up for several fishing magazines, and I even joined the local bass fishing club and started to attend the monthly meetings. And I learned all kinds of things. Did you know, for example, that a fish is a cold-blooded animal? Did you know that? Now, what that means is because they're cold-blooded, they're very sensitive to water temperature. And so if we're trying to find fish, one of the most important things we have to do is to be able to take the temperature of the water and look for temperature ranges that are the most attractive for fish to be in. They like to be in warmer water when they can. It's easier for them to maintain their metabolism there. But here's an interesting point. Water is always warmer in direct sunlight than it is in the shade, isn't that right? But fish won't sit in direct sunlight because they don't have any eyelids and the sun hurts their eyes. So water is always warmer at the surface of the lake than it is way down deep, isn't that true? But you won't see a fish just sit at the surface of the water all day long because most of the food's at the bottom. And besides, if they just sat at the surface, it'd be way too easy for a bird to swoop down and get them. And so as I began to understand all the different things that fish think about, I got really good at finding them and catching them. Fast forward a few years, I found myself in the profession of sales, and I really had the good fortune in those early years to go to a lot of training seminars and read a lot of good books on sales. And we used to have this thing, I don't know if you've ever heard of this or not, we used to have these little plastic things called a cassette tape. You ever heard of this? Had a little magnetic tape inside, and you could plug this into the dashboard of your car, and you could listen to teaching how to sell driving down the road. Right? If you're not familiar with them, I'm sure the local museum, you can check them out. But so I listened to these cassette tapes nonstop. I mean, my floorboard of my car was just littered with these cassette tapes, learning while I was driving down the road. Here's what was interesting. Everything I was taught back in those early days said, here's how top salespeople think. Here's what top salespeople should say. Here's what really successful salespeople do. And I got to tell you, that was a little incongruent with what my dad said, because my dad never once said, if you want to catch a fish, you need to think like a fisherman. He always said you need to think like a fish. And so here's what I believe about selling. If we want to get really, really good at this profession, we have to kind of get past the selling part. Let's not think like a salesperson. What we need to do is learn to think like customers. Or to be more specific, learn to think about the things that customers think about. That completely changed my thinking about selling, and when I decided I wanted to better understand what customers think about, I got to tell you, it changed everything about the trajectory of my career. So here's what I think we should spend some time on and what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes, and that is this. Understanding the psychology of why customers buy and how customers buy. If we can get closer to these two things and really better understand what governs customer behavior, why they make decisions the way that they do, we can be far, far more effective in selling. Do you agree with that? Think that's true?